By entering and remaining in the meeting, you are consenting to being filmed and recorded, and to the possible use of your images and recording for broadcasting purposes. Filming or recording is only permitted in this room whilst the meeting is taking place, and must stop when the meeting is either adjourned or closed. Filming is not permitted elsewhere in the building at any time. Item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence, Josh Allen, Paul Basham, Cynthia Garson, Gillian Harris, John McKay, Richard Murphy. Item 2, declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations to make today? Item 3. Members, this is the annual report which sets out how Hampshire and the Isle of Wight Police and Crime Panel is meeting the balanced appointment objectives for 2025 to 2026 municipal year. Are there any questions? Is there any debate? Recommendations are on page 5. You've got 2 recommendations. The panel notes its membership for the 2025-26 municipal year as laid out in table 2 of this report. The second recommendation, that subject to the appointments board proposed above, the panel notes the panel membership is, at the current time, politically proportionate for the purposes of a balanced appointment objective, as outlined with table 3. Right, item 4, election of the chair. Panel, I invite nominations for chairman for 2025-2026. Do I have a proposer and a seconder for each, please?
I'd like to propose Councillor Philip Davis.
Yep. Who else we got for nomination?
I'd like to propose Simon, please.
Right, what we usually do if there is a contest is we invite each of the candidates to make a brief submission to the panel, at which point at the end of that submission you can vote in a normal way. Colleagues, who would like to go first?
Chair?
Oh, you go second.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Any seconders?
I second Simon Bound.
I'd second Philip Davies.
So who wants to go first? Anyone want to speak? Simon, speak to the panel.
Thank you very much, Pete. I'm acutely aware that we've got quite a lot of people that have had mixed tenure as far as length of time for the panel. I was the panel chair for about 5 years previously, and for me there's something about this panel that is really important to do fundamentally what its objectives are, which is to both challenge and, more importantly, I would suggest, support the Police and Crime Commissioner. The work that the Police and Crime Commissioner and her office does for our 2 counties and the 2 unitaries is enormous, and it doesn't get much of a light shone on it. I think it's really important that we do that job. It is understated often that that is the primary job of our scrutiny function. It's really important as well with, let's be candid, changing politics in our county, that we do that in a way that is cross-party, collaborative, and best by our residents and the residents of each of our colleagues, as that is fundamentally our job. That's all I'd like to say, Pete. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for nominating me. So I think there are lots of people around the table that are really well qualified. I think probably anybody here could be in either of the 2 roles. I have to say I've been engaged with this panel now for the last 4 years. It's been an absolute privilege. I think 1/3 of the people around the room are ex-law enforcement, including me. That gives us quite an interesting exposure and expertise to help on the panel. I think, as Simon says rightly, the role of this panel is critical in terms of actually supporting, but also holding the Police and Crime Commissioner to account for the at the moment excellent work that's being done. But I would be absolutely honoured to support this panel, and if that includes being chairman, that would be a privilege. Thank you.
Right, could I ask for a show of hands in respect of Councillor Phil Davis, please? Thank you. Can I have a show of hands for Councillor Simon Bunnis? That is 5 votes for Councillor Davis and 9 votes for Councillor Bound. I would invite Councillor Bound to take the position as chair.
Thank you very much, panel, and good morning. I just need to catch up because, as Pete says, Katie writes amazingly comprehensive notes, so we know exactly where we are. So we're now, as Pete is whispering in my ear, at the bottom of page 2, election of vice chairman. Panel, I invite nominations for vice chairman for the municipal year 2025-2026. Do I have any proposers or seconders? Oh, sorry, Leslie.
I'd like to propose Councillor Philip Davis.
Have a seconder?
Seconded.
Thank you, Joanne. Yeah, any other proposals? No, in that case, I'm assuming we're all agreed. Philip, if you'd like to come and join me, that would be great. It's collecting all your stuff that takes a while. You're welcome. So, panel, if we can now move on to item 6, minutes of the previous meeting held on the 24th of June 2025. The minutes from the confirmation hearing in June are attached as a supplementary. Are they confirmed as a correct record? Agreed? Brilliant, thank you very much. Item 7, questions and deputations. We haven't received any questions or deputations for this meeting. Members may or may not be aware, but we do have quite a strict timescale as far as getting those to be accepted for the meeting. Then we'll go through to item 8, Chair's announcements. All of our new members are welcome. I think we had quite a lot of the confirmation hearing as well because of where it landed within the municipal year. We have since, though, had Councillor Josh Allen join us from Southampton. Welcome, Josh. Oh, is Josh not here? Sorry. I was looking over there for Southampton. Along with a new Deputy Councillor, Jackie Raymond. Brilliant. Welcome, Jackie. I'd like to extend thanks to Councillor Christy Lambert, the previous full member from Southampton, along with her deputy, Matthew Renyard. I'd also like to welcome Wayne Jackson from the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner to his first meeting, who is the new Head of Governance, Compliance and Risk. We are planning another induction refresher training session this year for the panel. And this is due to take place on Monday, the 29th of September at 2 p.m. And that will happen on Teams, so we can all attend as much as we can. That would be great. The Police and Crime Commissioner has an urgent meeting this morning, and so will be joining us at around 10:30. So I therefore propose we take some of the PCP reports first and return to those of the Commissioner once Donna has arrived. If members are happy with that, are we all content? We are. Brilliant. Thank you very much. So I suggest we jump to item 12, which is the Police and Crime Panel Annual Report, which is on pages 67 to 78. Now, panel, this is a draft annual report for the municipal year 2024-25, starting on page 67 of the pack. Are there any questions on the report? Any questions, comments? No. In that case, let's go straight to the recommendations, which are on page 67. 2, that the panel receive and agree the draft annual report. 3, that following the meeting, the final report be published and circulated to all local authorities in the Hampshire and Isle of Wight policing area. Are we all agreed? Thank you very much. And then we go to item 13, which is the Police and Crime Panel Annual Complaints Report, pages 79 to 84. Panel, this is the annual report setting out the activities of the delegated officer and the complaints subcommittee in relation to the complaints made against the Police and Crime Commissioner. Are there any questions on the presentation? No? Anybody wish to have any debate about the report? I don't see any. Thank you very much. In that case, we go to recommendation on page 79 that the annual complaints report is noted. Are we all agreed? Brilliant. Thank you very much. Then we go to item 14, which is the Police and Crime Panel financial monitoring, leading to the 2026-27 grant budget agreement, which is on pages 85 to 90. Panel, this report summarises the Police and Crime Panel's budget for the 24-25 year in advance of agreeing the proposed budget for 2026-27. Are there any questions, comments, matters for debate? No. In that case, if I may put forward the recommendations which are on page 85, that the final financial position for 24-25 be noted, that we note the current performance against the budget for this financial year, and agree the proposed budget for the panel for 2026-2027, subject to confirmation of the government grant for 26-27. Are we all agreed? Great, thank you very much. Now we go to item 15, Police and Crime Panel Subcommittee appointments, which is on pages 91 and 90 to 98. We are invited as part of this report to appoint members to the Complaint Subcommittee, which is to be politically proportionate and consist of up to 5 members, with one of the independent co-opted members being chairman. So that means that it's either Shirley or Trevor. Our membership last year was Shirley Young, the independent co-opted member, as the chairman, Councillor Vivian Ackwell, Liberal Democrat, Councillor Joanna Burton, Conservative, Councillor Gwen Robinson, Conservative, and Councillor Becky Williams, Labour. Councillor Ackwell and Williams are no longer on the panel, so as the minimum we need a new Liberal Democrat and a new Labour member to sit on the subcommittee. Do we have any nominations? Yes, Tonya.
Can I nominate Luigi, please?
Luigi, you happy? Yeah. You are, brilliant. And if there's no other Lib Dems, which I don't think there would be, have we got a Labour nomination? Jackie?
In Josh's absence, I'm happy to nominate him, but obviously I don't know whether his work, because he does work full-time, whether that would fit in, but...
We can take that, Jackie, that's great, and change it if it doesn't quite work. Thank you very much, that's really helpful.
Chair?
Yes, John.
Would that mean that Jackie would step in if she's his sub?
Oh, I'll have to ask Katie and Pete Nut. I think that it has to be the named person, doesn't it?
Yeah. Sorry, can I just ask a question then? Presumably, that if you're a sub, you're not on a subcommittee anyway. It would only be the full members of the... Yeah, that's fine, just checking.
You're absolutely right, Jackie. Thank you very much. Just need to checked, because we've got confirmation here, but Shirley and Joanne are both happy to remain on the subcommittee. Brilliant. So we can then go to recommendation on page 91 panel. Oh, we need to confirm one more Conservative. I had missed that. Gwen? You.
Yes, I'm happy to remain on the panel.
Brilliant, thank you very much. I'd already made the assumption that you were Brilliant, thank you, Gwen, that's fantastic. So the recommendations on page 91, that the panel agree the continuation of the complaints subcommittee for the year 2025-26 in accordance with the terms of reference set out in the appendix of this report, that the panel agree that membership of the complaints subcommittee for the 2025-26 municipal year, Katie is just going to agree the membership, so we've got everything recorded properly.
Thank you. So we have the membership confirmed as Luigi Gregori, Josh Allen, Shirley Young, Joanne Burton and Gwen Robinson.
Thank you for that, Katie. And that the panel notes the agreement of terms of reference for the complaint subcommittee will be published on the panel's website. Are we all happy with the recommendations? Brilliant. Thank you very much. Whizzing through. So we go to item 16, which is the Police and Crime Panel Work Programme on pages 99 and 104. Do members have any requests for items to add to the work programme? I don't see any, and it's also fair to say we can have a conversation about them and moving as we go through the municipal year if we need to and things crop up. In that case, I suggest we probably need to go to a break until the commission. Sorry, Pete, go
on. Colleagues, I didn't actually get you to vote on the recommendation at item 3, which is the recommendations for the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Crime Panel, meeting a balanced appointment objective 25-26. I skipped over that. Could I invite your vote on your recommendations 2 and 3, which is page 5 of your documentation?
Are we all happy? I think we are, Pete. Thank you very much.
Carried away in a wave of excitement.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I don't think we've got Donna with us yet, Katie. So let's go for a break, shall we, until we get Donna to arrive. So we'll take a break. Donna is due to join us at past, so if we can not go too far, that would be great, so that we can commence when she's here. Thank you very much, members. We've managed to complete all our other items. We were just waiting for Donna to arrive. Donna, it's sort of really over to you, and of course we can always start with your announcements. That would be great. Then we'll just see if we've got any questions on your announcements, and then we'll go straight through to your annual report, if that's all right. So, Donna, over to you.
Good morning. Thank you very much, new chair, new vice chair, and new members of the panel as well. It's lovely to be here with you. I'm not joined by Kate Gunson, the chief executive to my right, because she's actually on annual leave today. So joined by Wayne Jackson, who is the head of governance and performance at the OPCC, who some of you will remember, who previously worked as was a police officer, 28 years service in 29 years service in Hampshire Constabulary, and did work in my office working with me for the previous 18 months before his retirement. And Karen, who you will know through subcommittees and through previous appearances at the Police and Crime Panel as our head of performance in the OPCC. Thanks very much, Chair. So I'm going to canter through the Police Commissioner announcements which have been sent to you. I'm just going to highlight a couple of the key points and then, as always, very happy to take any questions that you may have. So in April, looking at the last 3 months look ahead, I opened the applications for my Safer Communities grants round, and that was to support crime prevention and to make communities safer, particularly focusing on antisocial behaviour and those sorts of things. And that was a total fund of 1.35 million. We did have bids in of over 1.6 million, so very, very oversubscribed. And a big thank you to my team. Those organisations who are receiving money or who are not have now had their letters, and we did make sure that there was a real geographical spread of the organisations and charities that we funded. And if any of you would like to know where they are, particularly in your wards, in parts of the counties that you represent, they are available on the OPCC website if you want to have a look. Moving then, still in April, I was really pleased to work with Hampshire Fire and Rescue Service. I mean, I work with them continually anyway on crime reduction measures, but there was a particular programme that I visited which was an early intervention course run for young people in Waterlooville, and some of these young people were those that had been referred by the police because they'd been committing arson or doing things that otherwise that brought it to the fire brigade's attention effectively, and it was really good to be able to fund that as part of the £500,000 allocation I had, an uplift of allocation to tackle antisocial behaviour, which was awarded to me as Police and Crime Commissioner from the Home Office in March of 2024. So it's paid through that fund, and when we have seen a reduction of 50% in antisocial behaviour, but I'll cover that in the annual report. I was pleased to attend the Botley Parish Council. Issues for all the parish councils were very similar around antisocial behaviour, fly tipping, and particularly speeding through villages, particularly where you do have the parish councils. Then still in April for a moment, during National Stalking Week, I was pleased to be able to raise the best practice and the work that we're doing here, working with the upper tier authorities and also with the Integrated Care Board on the work that we are commissioning together to try and prevent and tackle stalking. And we've got some fantastic health professionals in Hampshire who are working on this area, making us one of the best and most effective areas in the country for spotting the issues and trying to reduce the harm. But it really is a collaborative approach, and I'm very grateful to the other partners who I've just mentioned who are very committed to this particular area. I invested £735,000 into 2 targeted programmes to reduce domestic abuse and reoffending. The first is called Project Cara, and it delivers awareness training and awareness raising workshops for first-time domestic abuse offenders. And we have seen an evidence via the pilots and the evaluation that we've done of a 35% reduction in that particular type of offending. And also Project Juno, which supports women in the criminal justice system by specifically trying to tackle their root causes of offending, and in particular the trauma-informed practice approach that I've spoken to you about before, and the Hampton Trust deliver those programmes for us. I then also attended in April, it was Parish Council season by the way, Curdridge Parish Council meeting along with one of our MPs, Paul Holmes, where again speeding, and we met with the Villages Speed Watch group, and they raised the issue of electric scooters amongst other things on footpaths. I then attended the Twyford Parish Council AGM, And then finally, towards the end of the month, I spoke at the annual Harbour Masters conference, which is held in the Solent, with the Police Marine Unit, meeting with both Queen's Harbour Master and the other Harbour Masters to really highlight and share information around intelligence gathering on the water, to support the police in helping to prevent people smuggling, trafficking, and antisocial behaviour on the water, so fast jet skis and things like that we know can lead often to very serious accidents. Moving into May, I hosted the first major local policing conference that we've had in the police force in my time, in my knowledge, ever, but certainly in recent years. But it was a really good opportunity to showcase Hampshire and the Isle of Wight Constabulary's leadership in delivering strong community-focused policing. And we did bring together our key partners and agencies who we are working with across the police force area in local policing, particularly obviously local authorities and health partners again. We did highlight the local Bobby scheme and the new neighbourhood policing model that we adopted in the summer of 2023 after Scott Chilton started. When you remember, he changed the operating model of the police force. We were joined by the policing minister online, Dame Diana Johnson, who gave significant praise for what we're doing here in Hampshire and referred to our local policing model, particularly my introduction of the local bobbies in January 24 as being the national blueprint and an exemplar. That's something that her and the Home Secretary have replicated to a certain extent across the country, and they're rolling that out as part of their local policing guarantee. Moving on then, with the local policing conference, I was also able to then announce the new Country Watch Rural Crime Task Force that I'd promised earlier in 24, in the spring of 24, and is a big feature in my new police and crime plan, which the panel kindly supported last year. And this really is about tackling serious unorganised crime in our countryside areas. HMIC, His Majesty's Inspector of Constabularies, did a review of our serious and organised crime work in the force, and also some of that cross-border organised criminality in rural areas, and we need to get better. Now that review is now 18 months, 2 years out of date almost, but we already knew that, and that's why one of my big pledges was to bring in a rural crime task force to address this. They're already doing it, they're already getting on with it, and we've got some brilliant results coming out of that, with some quite serious rural criminals now being completely disrupted, and in fact some of them are behind bars as well, which is good. I have invested in the task force being equipped with ANPR cameras, the latest up-to-date drones, which also include thermal imaging, so they have those infrared cameras, particularly for nighttime, which is really key. Moving on then, I was pleased to be able to fund British Sign Language training for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight Constabulary officers and police staff members, to make sure that anyone coming into police custody or a witness or someone who needs to be interacting with the police for any reason, if they are deaf or hard of hearing, we're able to make sure that we can communicate with them effectively, and the training has been delivered by Sign for Thoughts, and they have been fantastic. I attended the New Milton Residents Association meeting to provide an update on local crime and future policing plans to keep the community safe. I responded to the independent sentencing review led by the previous Lord Chancellor, the Right Honourable David Gauke. In fact, I met with him twice in the review, and then I met with him before his publication, and he went through his proposed report with me, giving me an opportunity to feed back with him. This was in my role as National Criminal Justice Lead. And for those of you that aren't aware, David Gauke was asked by the current Lord Chancellor, Shabana Mahmood, who I've also been working with, to do a review of sentencing and how the criminal justice system could work slightly more effectively and efficiently. The key points I fed back to him were around meaningful rehabilitation. Less people going to prison. I'm not necessarily against that if you are tackling the root cause of the offending, be it drugs, alcohol, violent thoughts caused by perhaps a real decline in someone's mental health. So as long as the rehabilitation and the root cause that's tackled is invested in properly, I think this could be a real game changer for the country. I really, really do. But we also must recognise that there are just some offenders that really do need to be behind bars for the protection of others, and they are particularly the most serious sexual offenders and violent offenders, and that is there, as I say, to protect victims. I also called on the deportation, the expedited deportation of foreign national offenders to make more space in the prison population, because we know that around 12 to 13% of the current prison population of male adult prisoners are made up of foreign national offenders. The government have taken on board that proposal and are looking to expedite and tighten up those rules. So, well done to the government for what they're doing there. And that is costing around £540 million a year to house those around 13,000 people, men predominantly in the adult male prison population. I hosted my online COP session, Commissioner's Oversight of Policing Services, with an online Q&A from the acting Chief Constable, and we were able, I think we had 120 pre-submitted questions, which we got through, and many more on the night during the live event. So if you haven't attended one of those before, please do look out for them on the constabulary's social media pages, on mine and on my office's, and you will see the next event, which I think is coming up in September or October, September. Yeah, I'm looking at Marisa, who knows these things. Moving into June then, finally, Chair, I'm so grateful to the panel for supporting the recruitment of the new Chief Constable. So Alexis Boone starts with us a week today. He'll be taking his affirmation at a courthouse in Hampshire next Monday, and I will be alongside him to support him in that. He obviously brings extensive experience from the Metropolitan Police Service, having led counter-terrorism operations at the highest level, both nationally and internationally, and is currently the head of local policing in the Metropolitan Police, with some 26,000 police officers under him, which is the lion's share of the police officers working in the Met. So I'm really looking forward to the experience and the a new spin that he will bring on things into Hampshire and the Isle of Wight Constabulary. I joined Portsmouth Police during Operation Sceptre Week, which you all know is the week of intensification for knife-related carrying harm crime, and it was good to see the work that the police force did over that particular week, with over 890 knives being recovered or surrendered into the knife surrender bins, and 19 arrests made following a heightened stop and search. We have seen a 22% drop in serious knife offences since 2022. I know it doesn't feel like it because there is more awareness and more coverage in the media now, but it really can skew people's feelings of safety in their communities. There are a couple of areas where I'm slightly concerned about knife crime compared to the 2022 data, but for most parts of the police force area, actually, we have seen crime coming down when it comes to knife-related crime. Ahead of the government's spending review, I joined the Thames Valley Police and Crime Commissioner, Matthew Barber, to call for urgent investment into the criminal justice system for the reasons I mentioned a couple of moments ago. And particularly the impact it's having on policing with the underfunding in courts, the probation service, victim services, which really is leaving victims without justice for far too long a period of time. And in some cases, we're now seeing a greater number of trials collapsing because victims have moved on with their lives, and 2 years later, they don't want to give evidence and support the trial and drag it all up again, because people do need to recover and heal when they've been through an often traumatic experience. Following the Chancellor's announcement after the strategic spending review, I did reaffirm my commitment to do everything that I can to protect frontline services in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight Constabulary, because it appears that we will have a real-time cut when you look at the current rates of inflation over the next 3 years. I launched the new retail crime reporting platform called UK PAC, UK Partners Against Crime, and this really is about helping the police to investigate shoplifting offences quicker. It's helping those shops, retailers who are detrimented by ongoing shoplifting to be able to report, get CCTV and still images onto and into the police system within minutes of it happening, if they so choose, and to also write their statements and get all of that uploaded without a police officer having to come and sit there with them for an hour or two and do it. We've got, I think, over 450 businesses already signed up onto the UK PAC platform, the app, which I'm paying for, which is free to access for every retailer across Hampshire and Isle of Wight for a year. And then after that, if they want to stay on it, it's £20 a month per store, and they can have as many staff working in that store on the system as they wish. We are also looking to roll this out for rural areas as well now too, so it's going beyond just the retail. I met with the official verderer, Edward Heron, in the New Forest with Acting Chief Constable Sam Dorea, and we were joined by Julie Jones, Chair of the Animal Accident Reduction Group, and that was very much focusing on speeding traffic and the animal deaths and injuries that sadly happen every year throughout the forest because of the miles and miles of roads they've got that cut directly through the forest itself. I welcomed the announcement of the full public inquiry into grooming gangs following the Baroness Casey report, and I did describe it as obviously long overdue and essential for justice. So well done to those people in the government and positions of power who have taken the decision to do that. It did give me an opportunity to reaffirm my call for mandatory CCTV in taxis. As you know, there is currently a loophole. We have got 4 or 5 councils across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight who are now insisting that there is CCTV in taxis, with Portsmouth, Gosport and Southampton being the first of those, so well done to them. But I would urge everyone else, through your licensing departments, please do look at this, and the government have now confirmed that they are going to be reviewing national licensing policy nationally, legislation, to cut the loopholes where they exist. I awarded £15,000 to the Portsmouth Mediation Service to expand on the significant, probably the most significant ASB issue we've had in Hampshire for 4 or 5 years now, down at the Hot Walls in Old Portsmouth, which Kimberly will be aware of, which has really brought a massive disruption for local people, very dangerous for young people jumping into the water, particularly when the tide goes out, right at the entrance to the harbour as well. And so Portsmouth Mediation put together a compelling bid, which I funded jointly with Portsmouth City Council, and it's a really good piece of work. And we've also got Operation Nautical working down at South Parade Pier, which is now into its 2nd year, and I know it's your portfolio, Kimberly, so thanks for your support with the great partnership working. And then coming towards the end now, Chair, I did speak at the Petersfield First Friday Business Network lunch. Thank you to them for inviting me to come along and speak about the subsequent police station opening and other things going on in the area. I held the first of my rural engagement forums in East Meon, and brought together farmers, landowners, along with Assistant Chief Constable Tara McGovern, who is our lead for local policing, which encompasses the Rural Crime Task Force, and again reiterated to them the mobile ANPR cameras and other things which we can site on their land with their permission when they know that they have got issues that are going on, for example, during hare course season, which we are in again now. And I was invited to join a community safety panel hosted by Suella Braverman, again focusing on local policing issues, initiatives, ASB. And then I did formally open the new police station in Petersfield a decade after the previous one had closed in 2016. I was joined by the Acting Chief Constable, the Town Mayor, local MP, and it was great to have so many members of the public just wander up and want to stand there with us. I think at one point we had 50 or people there. The town crier probably drew some attention to that, which is fantastic. But it was good, and it has a front counter. And for anyone that's near Petersfield that wants to go and have a look, it is the genuine, the original Doctor Who's TARDIS. From the front, it looks very narrow and small, but the building does open up. It's quite a bit bigger. And we've got CID working there. We've got multiple interview rooms. We've got Response Patrol will be working from there. Another specialist unit that escapes me, and also the 999 responders can be based from there too. And we have now formally moved out of Penn's Place, which is the former offices of East Hampshire District Council, which is where they were based before. As part of the government Safer Streets summer initiative, all police and crime commissioners were tasked by the Home Secretary to work with the Chief Constable and write back to the Home Secretary giving the force's plan for the summer safety initiative, because we know that the crime levels surge over the summer. It's the busiest time for policing apart from New Year's Eve, and the Home Secretary wanted reassurance that there were enough police officers on duty, that they were going to be in the right areas, and one of the things that we've had to do is to identify hotspot policing areas in the police force area where crime levels are over a certain level for drug taking, knife related harm, stop and search, arrests, violence, electric scooters, ASB, and so we have 28 areas across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight that meet the criteria as prescribed by the Home Secretary, and so part of our summer Safer Street Summer Initiative demand that I had to write back to her on was around explaining how we are going to be policing those 28 areas, and they are in most of our urban areas, which won't surprise you. So some places like Portsmouth and Hampton have got 3 or 4 hotspot areas each because they've got several urban centres. So again, if you want to have information about that, it is on my website, or I'm happy to send things through to you. Finally, that was supported by a £620,000 fund that I was given by the Home Office to support the summer policing initiative. So again, thanks to the government for that funding. It is so needed and so welcome. And then finally, I hosted a public meeting in Ryde with Joe Robertson last week, which brought together businesses across the Ryde area. Councillor Lucioni, it's such a shame it's your ward, but you were chairing your own community safety cabinet meeting, but you and I did catch up afterwards about it, as I know. And I have announced an independent review into Hampshire and the Isle of Wight Constabulary's Professional Standards Department, which you may have noticed in the press 2-3 weeks ago. It's an unusual thing for a Police and Crime Commissioner to do. Thankfully, we don't have need to do these things very often, but this does follow the tragedy of 2 police officers dying over a 5-month period linked to police investigations. And so I had significant concerns enough to warrant an independent review, and I'm just in the process of working through the terms of reference and appointing the independent reviewer to conduct that work for me, done in conjunction with Alexis Boone, the new Chief Constable. He is aware of it. I discussed it with him clearly before I made the announcement, and I will keep the panel posted on that. I envisage the work will be done over the next 3 to 4 months and be concluded by Christmas. I provided £150,000 towards the Gosport Not In My Town project, which is the first clear hold build programme we have in the county, and it is absolutely essential. And then last week I met with Jim McMahon, the devolution minister, to discuss with him and the other 5 areas who are the go-earlies for English devolution and the creation of a mayoral combined authority next May, and that's because of the impact on my office and for my staff, and there was confirmation that where the boundary is coterminous, so actually for all 5 of those that have been announced, the role of the Police and Crime Commissioner will be subsumed into the Mayor's office. And finally, I'm grateful for you allowing me to come and address you at 10:30 this morning as opposed to 10 o'clock. That is because on Friday I was summoned to a meeting at 10 o'clock this morning with the Home Office, so I've been sat around the corner in a room talking about just this issue, and they have just confirmed that the powers of the Police and Crime Commissioner will not transfer to the Mayor until the 1st of April 27, which, because we thought it would be from the 7th of May next year. It won't be until April 27, and that's to give a chance for whoever the new mayors are to then transition with the outgoing Police and Crime Commissioner, and to make sure that for the staff that work in the OPCC that will transfer into MOPAC, the Mayor's Office Police and Crime, or whatever the Mayor wants to call it, it should be a relatively seamless transfer, but it's to make sure that all of that is done in time for the new financial year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Donna. I don't know about other panel members, but I'm just exhausted listening about all your activities you've been up to in the last few months. Donna, thank you for sharing it with the panel so that we can actually view it, think of any questions or comments that we have. Panel members, do we have any? Gwen?
Good morning, Donna, and thank you very much for that update. Excellent, as usual. There was just one thing that you mentioned, and I just wanted to push you a little bit on that, was you were mentioning about taxis within there. Now, it may or may not be the case, and I'm sure you'll know, but I'm concerned about out-of-area taxis. So, for example, I think there was something recent about out-of-area taxis from Wolverhampton in Portsmouth. So my question is, local authorities issue the licences for taxis. So when they issue, so for example, at our council, Havant Borough Council, we have a licensing, they are given that. So when a taxi receives their licence, does that restrict them to their area, or is that something that is legal across the country? My concern, and what I'm sort of thinking about with somebody coming down possibly from the Midlands down there, I mean, are we looking at some form of county lines or something where they're sort of in plain sight.
Thank you very much. This is, having been a council leader myself previously, an area that I know a lot about because I've done a lot of work on this. And Wolverhampton, as you'll know, for Uber is where they do a lot of their registration for their drivers. But because of the nature of the online app and where they take the job, they are able to pick up and drop off anywhere because that's one of the things that's a loophole in the current legislation. So even if every council in Hampshire brought on board new licensing rules that drivers have to have CCTV in their cameras, in their cars, that would only be applicable for the drivers who are licensed through that licensing authority. So through Havant Borough Council, Gosport Fairham, East Hampshire, Test Valley, for example. But if you are an Uber driver working off an app and your job is coming in through a system that's based in Wolverhampton, but the pickup is in Portsmouth and it's taking you to Havant, for example, it would be down to the licensing authority where the app is based and where the jobs are coming in, which would be into Wolverhampton. And this is one of the loopholes that the government are looking into quite sensibly. So there is an opportunity for us all to lobby in on that one. And I think what's happened with some of the grooming gang things and the involvement of taxi drivers and taxi companies as part of facilitation of some of that, we understand that this has been a loophole. And, we have had without being too dramatic in Southampton, a rapist convicted or a sexual offender convicted following CCTV that he had in his car because Southampton City Council decree that you have to have it. He was a local registered driver. He thought he turned his camera off and he didn't, and that is what got him convicted of that assault because the person had been drugged in the car as well, from what I understand. So actually, if it wasn't for that CCTV, so well done to Southampton City Council for what for that. But yeah, so I've written to all councils, I think 2 or 3 times now over the last 3 or 4 years, seeking licensing authorities to take it up here. I've also lobbied in nationally to say, look, it's all very well and good me pushing from the bottom up in my own area, which I'll continue to do, but actually it needs to be I'm not a top-down person, but I do think this is something that needs to be top-down. And actually one of the things that's come out of the Baroness Casey review was just this point around that she highlighted about 3 or 4 months ago, was around taxis, the linkage, what happens around exploitation, and she's absolutely right.
Just before I go to the next speaker, I just want to say that I'm really appreciative of all your leadership you've done on this. It's meant a really robust conversation in Basingstoke and Dean, and I think it was really interesting. Just get it. Sometimes interesting as members, isn't it? When you get closer to the legislation, when even the legislation member says local authorities should have a good reason why not. That's what the legislation says today. Not all the reasons to do it. We'll actually come up with a really good reason not to do it. So thank you for that, Donna. Alan.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd just like to ask a question about retail crime. And I saw your announcement there that over 300 businesses are using UK PAC. Is that individual businesses or is that including chains? Because I suspect Sports Direct might have about 40 shops. Is that 40 of those 300? And where do you see the promotion of UK PAC coming from? Is it through safer community groups? Is it through local police forces? Because I don't see evidence in the north of the county of a big take-up of this yet, and I'm quite keen because we do have shoplifting gangs going around, especially on chain stores.
Thank you very much. At the moment, it says 300 in the paperwork, is actually nearer 450 now. And it is different organisations that will have multiple users on that platform. And at the moment, they're mostly sort of national. So it's Sainsbury's, Tesco, Sports Direct, Next, B&Q. They're all of the big Co-op, Southern Cooperative and the Co-op. So it's the convenience stores who are being hit literally, multiple times an hour across the county. Or counties, I should say. So at the moment, it's sort of, it's all your big supermarkets are the main ones. But we have got, I think, River Island, and we've got Next, and we've got other people. I also set up the Business Crime Reduction Partnership, which had our first meeting at John Lewis in Southampton in November last year. And so I have about 30 or 40 different businesses that attend that quarterly. And it's run, I chair it, but the main person that's sort of doing a lot of the legwork for me is Chief Inspector Marcus Cater, who is the business crime reduction lead for the police force. So if the panel is interested, I can get you a list of all of the organisations we've got signed up. It's easier to onboard the big chains, the Tesco's, the Sainsbury's, the Asda are there too, but actually we also need to be signing up the small independents, the newsagents and people like that, pharmacies, because they are being hit regularly as well. So if you've got anyone in your patch that's interested, I can connect them with Gareth Lewis, who is the lead at UK PAC, and that he'll send someone out to go and sign them up.
Can I just come back on that? I think that would be very helpful, because I think some of the smaller independents, if they saw some of the chains, we've got, Co-op, Express, Sainsbury's, are using it locally, I think that might help encourage them, if they see success locally, to actually join up. So I think if we could find out who they are, and then we can use our local teams to contact them and see if we can set it up.
I agree, Alan. Sadly, I have the converse, where I have two convenience stores that are from a large regional chain, and they do almost nothing to support the police and report shoplifting. So I'm intrigued that they were one of the brands that you named on your list, Donna, and exactly, we've had this conversation before. So I think it'd be really helpful if we could have that shared, if that's okay. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Leslie.
Thank you, Chair. Donna, nice to see you. Are you confident Hampshire and the Isle of Wight Constabulary are ready and resourced to deal with any potential public disorder linked to the right-wing narrative and irregular migrants? And are you assured that the intelligence is scrutinised and the constabulary remains vigilant and alert to public safety? This is on the back of feedback last year that the policing services didn't act on the information and intelligence available. Thank you.
Yeah, we have a lot going on at the moment. I think we had 2 protests last week. We've got another 2, I think, this week. They are mostly all now, well, the protests that we've had have all been linked over the last couple of weeks to where asylum seekers are housed. Portsmouth and Aldershot are the 2 most prevalent sites in the county. And actually, I spoke to somebody last week from the Aldershot area about this. And he said to me, feedback from a protester, he said, we get on all right with the local police because they've got to know us and we've got to know them. And yes, there are 2 separate groups, but we all sort of know who each other is. We're making our point, but, I think there was some feedback that when police officers are drafted in from other areas, let's say from the cities, public order police officers, it can sometimes be a little bit more hostile because they don't understand the who's who in the environment and etc. So I think one of the things that's coming out of this is that the value of the local policing teams who know individuals who are building those relationships, again it's back to partnership working and all those things. It does feel to me like there are a couple of areas in the county that perhaps are a bit of a tinderbox at the moment, and you're probably sensing that across the UK with seeing this stuff covered in the media all the time. We are quite fortunate here in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight in that the vast majority of our protests are completely legitimate. People make their point, they come along, they very often, the organisers will tell the police in advance, we're going to be here, we're meeting at this time, and they counter protest or, whichever, notifies the police first, the other one will then notify when they become aware. And the police don't that often need to really hold the line because actually they're respectful of, no one wants to get hurt, they want to make their point and they want to go home, and that's largely what happens. We have had issues where there have been more direct threats towards people coming in and out of the hotels, the residents that are living there themselves, and that's often when maybe tensions get heightened and the police have to step it up a bit. Fortunately, the full-on public order riot gear and everything has only been needed in a handful of times in this police force area over the last 12 months since the Southport riots started. Everything that's the point that we're sort of taking as the start point for a lot of this public sentiment that's going on at the moment. But largely, as I say, our groups are respectful of each other. They are making their point. They are lawful, and they go home. I would say we've had probably in total under 50 arrests in the last year. If I had to pluck a number from the air, like knowing the ones that I know of. But when you think about the fact that we are having these protests almost weekly, particularly up in Aldershot, actually that's pretty good. And in terms of the only issue I have with all of it is just the sheer demand on policing time, because there is so much else going on in our communities, and these things are happening right now when we've got motorbikes, cars, car meets, shoplifting they're trying to tackle and focus on, the rural crime stuff I'm asking them to do, or knife crime, drug-related harm, everything's a priority, right? So there's so much that they're trying to do, and we do have to significantly resource those issues just to make sure that it keeps everyone safe that's there, and that does take up a lot of police time.
And are you confident that the intelligence is scrutinised and acted upon, and there's good communication up and down the chain?
Home Office and government down to us around the national tensions, what's going on, yeah, that's been pretty good. I've been in those national meetings and the regional meetings and the briefings, and the Chief and I get those briefings regularly. In terms of the local things, yes, without going into too much detail, the police are, engaged with organisers, and where a new group will spring up, quite often you guys tell me, and then I'll feed that back in to make sure that everyone stays safe. So to those of you who have been sharing information with me around protests that you're aware of, or things that are right, about attention you think is about to be created, it's really, really helpful, because quite often through me will be the first time the police will become aware of some of these things, because you are the eyes and ears. So yeah, I do think the police are on it, they're looking at it, there's a whole team of people that are working on this stuff.
Thank you, Don. I'm just going to take two last questions, and that's Jackie and Tonya. So Jackie first.
Thank you. I indicated about business crime, but just on the demonstrations, the big one we had this week sometime, beginning of the week, I think it was handled really well by both the police and the two parties. I think the frustration that's been fed back, because it's on the verge of my ward, is because the police, I use the words loosely, but were quite laid back about it, but because they have that intelligence, they know the area, all of the 6 emails that I've had have all been about that the police were too laid back and a bit not interested. And I don't think that's true, but what I think is the communication about the style of how we police these demonstrations maybe needs some thoughts, because it's the hotel in Southampton where they are is on the verge of an area that is demographically older generation, and they maybe don't understand why that approach is taken against how they perceive it should be. So I ask you just to think about how we communicate the style of policing. I haven't got a complaint about how it was policed, just the perception, the optics of how it looks. My question was about business crime and more the local independent traders. You may or may not know the big issue we've got in Shirley and Southampton at the moment, where the parade of shops in Shirley Precinct, without going into too much detail, it's the same group of yous known to the local officers who are using knives to customers and the shopkeepers. It's been a big local media and social media about we're not doing enough. I've been down and I live not far from there, so I've been down and spoken to them. The shop owners are petrified and are now being escorted out of their shops to get home. I have never heard from them, and I've been quite involved with them, about the support they're getting from the police, and social media would, and believe what you want, but watching the videos, it's quite horrific what they're going through. So I understand the big retailers. I just worry about some of the smaller ones who maybe aren't so switched on, don't know where to go, don't know how to get involved. And that would definitely be the case in one of the patches in Southampton. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jackie. The feedback on the style of policing for the Southampton protest, that's really good feedback, particularly with that older demographic who don't get it. It will be a very conscious policing tactic to just calm everything down. If the police are relaxed, everyone else tends to be relaxed, but actually communicating that back is really key. So I will make sure that that's taken away. And then as an action, what you've just said around the threats with knives on Shirley High Street, And I'm looking at Marisa, if we can take that away as an action, and then I will arrange for you and I to meet with Alex Charge, who's the new district commander, the new superintendent, has been promoted to superintendent. He was the Havant, and Waterlooville, Hayling Island, Emsworth district commander as a chief inspector, just been promoted to super up to Southampton City, which is a bigger job. Brilliant, really experienced local police, senior police officer. I think we probably need to meet with him and discuss that, because that's beyond shoplifting. That's very much more drug-related crime, and that's quite serious. So let's deal with that one and take that offline if that's okay, Jackie. Thanks for the feedback.
Thank you very much. I'm conscious that I missed Luigi, so Luigi, over to you.
Donna, thank you very much for your report. There's a number of things I'd like to raise. First of all, I welcome the review into professional standards. This has always been a major problem if you're doing anything, even remotely resembling operational law enforcement. I think the system is very clunky, to say the least. You know, I mean, I've had officers who've been, under investigation for years. Investigation is closed down and then it's reopened for whatever reason. Okay. And thank you very much for arranging a police visit to Ace in Andover. Right. However, the general perception in Test Valley is there's a lack of police presence, I have to report. Okay. I'm a member of two councils, both Andover Town Council and Test Valley Borough Council, and both of them had debates where they've been quite critical of the police. In terms of Test Valley, they want to reopen the counter at the police station in Romsey. In Andover itself, there's a general complaint about lack of police presence and visibility. Now, added to this, and this is really what my question is, e-scooters are a bane of, I think, everybody's life. Okay. And I don't think they're being treated seriously enough at the moment. Okay, I mean, I've had reports of police officers seeing e-scooters, but virtually ignoring them. Okay, now I know a lot of them are driven by younger members of the population. Quite often they're of Eastern European extraction. Okay, and I'm not quite sure that they understand they're illegal. But what do you intend doing about this particular thing? Thanks.
Thank you very much indeed, and I agree with the timeliness of the PSD investigations. It's an issue. In terms of the Romsey front counter, we have looked at that because I know that that's long been a desire. The police station is so tiny and so small, and the space around it, even with an extension, because I said, well, let's see if we can build an extension then. I mean, it's not easy there, but we'll have to leave that one for today, but it is on the radar and I'm very aware. The e-scooters, yeah, I mean, it's such an issue. And, I blame successive Secretary of State for Transport, because actually the lack of education across the country, when parents are buying these £450, £500 scooters for their children, not realising that effectively if you're buying one privately, you are automatically encouraging your child to break the law, because it is not legal unless you're using it in your own garden or on private land. It's not legal to use it on a public highway or on a public road if it is privately owned at the moment. And I think there's been such a massive lack of education, a national campaign from the government to explain this, that it's only the permitted schemes that are legal. I've written, as you know, to successive Secretary of State for Transport. I'm not sure I've written to the current one, so I might give the new guy a go and see how I get on, because it may be that we get more action. It appears we've had some more action actually from the Labour government on several issues of things that I've been pushing for previously, like the taxi licensing. So I will do that again and take that away as an action to write again. Now, in terms of the police, their approach, as you know, is to, if they are linked to drugs, they will seize straight away, and almost in all cases, they'll seize the scooter, and then it will very often be crushed. And you'll remember that in March last year, I signed that contract with the Silver Lake garages based in the Meon Valley. They are just near Botley, and that's where they all go to be crushed. And there is a video on my Facebook page if any of you want to go and have a look at the crushing video of Operation Crush, and also on my OPCC one too. But I do think that, I am funding £750,000 again to councils to fund the community wardens in those 28 hotspot areas I was talking about earlier. And almost all the councils have taken up the offer to fund community wardens in that way. What it does mean, if a community warden, let's say from Test Valley Borough Council, could be an Andover, if you take the funding from me, that person can only be a community warden in the prescribed hotspot area and can't go across the borough. So I think that's why there has been a slightly slower take up from some of the councils, because they couldn't free up that capacity all in one go, but they are looking to recruit because I'm funding them through this government programme. The community wardens, therefore, as well as the police, can be stopping and challenging on the scooters and giving people a warning, particularly the community wardens. There are powers the Chief Constable can decree to a community warden, as you know, with fines and penalties and other things, and that's one of the things that we've now got where we have the community wardens that are being funded by me but employed by you. So I think it's more awareness. I do think it's about challenging, educating in the first instance. If you've got a kid who's just going to school and back, not doing anything wrong, but they shouldn't be on it, then the police will say you need to get off and push it home and you really shouldn't be using it to go to school anymore. Use one of the official hire ones if you've got one in your area. But they tend not to try and seize their scooters straight off if they're not doing any, if they're not using it for some other crime other than the fact they're using it without effectively an MOT and insurance, which is the crime that they would have been doing in that case. Sorry for the slightly convoluted answer, but I get the point you're making. It is an issue, but I don't think the police alone can sort this one out. It's just everywhere and there just aren't enough police officers. So it is going to need a comprehensive response, probably with community wardens and others as well.
Thank you, Donna. And lastly, Tonya.
Thank you, Chair. I, like Simon, was exhausted reading through everything you get through and was quite amazed by some of the stuff you do. Just touching on the scooters, the permitted ones in and around Southampton that then come over into Burswood, they're just as much of a nightmare. You've got 2, sometimes 3 people on those, and I can't see how they're safe, the way they just shoot across in front of cars, moving cars. Shoplifting, quite a lot of it is to fund drug use. But if you could indulge me, something happened to appear in my inbox on Friday, which was a colleague of mine trying to report 2 suspicious individuals that tried to engage him in drugs. And they were sat on a route to school. There's no children at school, we know, so not too bad, but tried to engage him in a drug deal. He tried to ring 101 and the message was there would be a 15-minute delay to answer his call. So he looked on the internet and it said suspicious activity existing now, call 999, which he did. And he gave them the 3 words and all the details, and they said that they would circulate it to the control room and send somebody out. Over an hour later, he got an email to say that the police didn't need to send officers, which he thought was very odd language, because the need to get the drugs off the street, he thought, was rife. So nothing went out to engage with these individuals who are still out to deal again and again and again to youngsters and to encourage this shoplifting. And he phoned me this morning and said, I believe you're off to the meeting. I just thought I'd update you that I got an update. The update was that the 3 words that he took down, that he gave, was taken down incorrect and was a place in America. Now, instead of phoning him back, which they had his number because he calls on an urgent 999, they just left it. So it's very, very disappointing. And I have encouraged him not to be deterred from it and to continue, because this is in his area, to continue reporting these things. But it's the whole mix. 15 minutes on a 101. This was a Friday. He said about 20 past, 10:30 in the morning. So 15 minutes for a 101 to give all the details and to say that they were sat with bags of drugs and tried to engage him. All of that was fed in and nothing from one mistake of taking down the 3 words and not phoning him. So I want to make you aware of these things because we're trying to encourage, all the crime to be reported, especially around drugs. And that was something that was happening at the time, and still nothing happened to go out and get that off the street.
Thank you very much for that, Tonya. I mean, I am disappointed to hear about that because they are exactly the sorts of things that the police force need to hear about, particularly if you think it's linked to other crimes. But the drug dealing in itself, if it's particularly to children, I think you indicated it could be to young people. That activity will be fueling a whole load of other stuff, from exploitation, county lines, knife carrying, using of scooters to move the drugs around. It's all connected. The demand at the moment, we normally get about 450 to 500 calls and crime reports in a day. Over the last 3 weeks, we have seen the highest demand the force has ever had at 800 calls, averaging a week for the last 3 weeks. So when I got back from leave a couple of weeks ago, the message that landed to me was things are really busy and it's stepped up already. And we're not, so even in our busiest days last summer, it wasn't as busy as that. Now, the 101 at the moment, I mean, I've got my accountability board tomorrow and I was looking through the papers yesterday. The 101 is averaging 2 minutes 35 seconds at the moment for last month. Now, there will be peaks, but 10:30 on a Friday morning is not normally a peak time. It would be a 10:30 on a Friday night, yeah, but not on a Friday morning. So I will look into that. And in terms of the what three words, you're right. All that someone had to do was phone him back and say, what road was it again? Can you just give me the actual road or the shop? That is really disappointing. We have taken on a lot of new staff in the control room because, as you know, we had those 85 vacancies and opened the new control room in Portsmouth to support the 2 in Southampton. And there is still ongoing learning and development with staff that are maybe just coming up to maybe 8, 9, 10 months into their service now. So it sounds to me like it's a learning, training, improvement thing that needs to happen because clearly that hasn't worked well. That job, was it in Basildon, did you say? Okay, in Hedgeland. Right, that job should have then transferred to the local policing team, who should have then gone through that afternoon, evening, a shift changeover to have a look at what's happened that day. And also, if it's been graded, it probably was graded as a grade 2, I would imagine, but they should have been sending someone out to that. And those officers that were sent to that job, if they couldn't get it on the what three words, you're right, they should have gone back to who's reported it and then called them. Something's gone wrong. I probably need to look into that and come back to you. If you want to forward me and I can keep you involved in the responding to the gentleman, I can do, or I can just come back to you and you can then update him, whatever you prefer. But I'd like to look into it for you because it's things like that we need to be getting on top of.
I would appreciate that, Donna, because it's these kinds of things where there are so many things that have gone wrong that then stop members of the public calling
Trust
in.
and confidence.
But this was a councillor colleague, and he's like, is there any point in doing it?
Yeah.
So, if that's how colleagues feel, members of the public are going to feel a lot worse.
Agree.
Thank you very much. We're done on that agenda item. Then moving on to item 10, which is the Police and Crime Commission's annual report for October 2023 to March 2025, which is on pages 15 to 54. Members, we have received the annual report from the Police and Crime Commissioner, including complaint information on page 53 of the pack in the appendix. Are there any questions on the report? Joanne.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Donna. Firstly, congratulations on the HMIC inspection report. Really pleased to see the outcome and very positive there. Within the report, the road safety, I mean, it fills my inbox up daily. Road safety is a huge priority for the residents of Fareham, and I know if road safety is the big issue, then actually we're quite fortunate that it's not overtaken by other things such as knife crime, but it does remain an issue. And I know that you desperately funding initiatives, local speed watch groups and cameras. And I just really want to know the funding that's going to these speed watch groups. And we've got a really active one in my ward, and they work very hard and they're feeding the information back to the police. And I just wonder if there's any opportunity to build on that data, Donna, and for the police. I mean, the police are supporting it, and they do feed back to the speed watch, but it's kind of like they're working really hard, tirelessly, and they just I think we need to somehow look to progress and develop the work that the speed watch groups are doing with the local policing. So it's just a thought.
Thank you very much. And you're right, your Speedwatch group in your ward is the best in the county in terms of the volume of what they're doing, how organised they are, how professional they are, how they collate their data. I get an email, I think weekly, you probably do 2 every 2 weeks, with all of the results and everything that they're doing. And they've done a phenomenally high number of sessions they've run, like more, probably as much as all of the others in the county put together. It is incredible. A really good exemplar for anyone who's thinking of having one in their ward. Contact Joanne to meet with her team, because they're brilliant there. Yeah, you're right. There is more that needs to be done. Road safety and speeding and all of the things associated to that are one of the 3 new focuses in the police and crime plan, as you know. We're looking at a road safety conference, I think, in the spring now. Yeah, we were going to look at it for October, November, but it's busy. There's a lot coming up, so we're going to actually do it in the spring now. So that'll be a real opportunity again for Speedwatch to have their voice and have their say. I think the key thing for me as well is the long-term solution for a lot of these issues of speeding doesn't actually sit with the police. It sits with you guys. It sits with the highways authorities. And if there was more money being invested in sleeping policemen and in chicanes and in speed bumps and other things, people would have to slow down. So I think, I'm going to push back a little bit on the police here, is that, the roads policing unit are growing. There are 4 new mobile speed vans I'm invested in, which I have paid for, and they're in train at the moment being converted, etc. And they are working with the groups, but there are the roads in this county where people are dying and are being injured, and we're having serious accidents almost, monthly. They are the ones the police are prioritising. So they go through their KSI data, which is where it drives the work of where they're going, and they are going to the roads where they know they're going to catch the most drug drivers and drink drivers, and they're going to the roads where they know that they are going to catch vehicles that are overweight through the commercial policing, roads policing unit, and they're going to the roads where they know that they are getting the link roads for people bringing drugs into the county or firearms into the county. So they're doing an awful lot, and they are prioritising that based on harm and risk, as you would expect. And speeding is a perennial problem, we know this, but we do need greater work from the highways authorities for the long-term solution on this one too.
Leslie.
Thank you, Chair. Donna, the Operation Clear Build holding gospel is continuing and clearly visually having success. Is there any intention to roll it out into other areas that we're concerned about in our county? Thank you.
Yes, it is. And following the learning and the success of the gospel Not in Our Town, it is now being rolled out. And I want to say it's in Test Valley. Is that the next? Ollie's going to look for me. So yeah, I think it's somewhere, it might even be Andover actually. So I think we are about to roll that out, and in which case we'll be in contact with the local stakeholders to be briefing them just the same as we did with all of you in terms of how it works, what, all of that prep work. So yes, there is definitely another location that the police have agreed, and there is another one they're working on in the pipeline now. So this just needs to be the way of life now, doesn't it, as you know, and it's a really, really effective policing tactical policing model to use, which was perfected in Liverpool because of all the drug gangs they had there.
I don't see any other questions, panel. So in that case, if we could go to page 15, where the recommendations are, that the panel receives the draft annual report of the Police and Crime Commissioner for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, and that delegated authority be given to the Democratic Services Officer to the panel in consultation with the Chairman of the panel to submit a report to the Commissioner setting out the panel's review and recommendations on the draft annual report in line with section 28 open brackets 4 close brackets of the Police Reform and Social Responsibility Act. Are we all in agreement? Brilliant, thank you very much. And then our last item for today is item 11, which is the Police and Crime Commissioner's Business and Retail Crime Update on pages 55 to 66. Over to you, Donna.
Thanks very much. I've already sort of given you a slight intro into UK PAC for those that weren't aware, but I'm going to hand over to Karen, who will take us through the information we've prepared for you. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Good morning, members of the Police and Crime Panel. Today I'm going to present on activity targeting business and retail crime. So here you can see an extract from the Police and Crime Plan and the 4 pledges that the Commissioner has made in this area. So if we begin with partnership working, the Commissioner mentioned in her announcements this morning how she convenes a well-established biannual business crime partnership. And much of the information that I present to you today is founded upon examples of collaboration. This slide highlights numerous examples of the Commissioner meeting with the business and retail community, promoting crime prevention advice, commissioning interventions and speaking at events to help shape a region that's attractive to new businesses. The Commissioner also mentioned in her announcements how she met with dozens of residents, local councillors and retailers in Ryde in July, co-hosted with MP Jo Robertson and supported by the Ryde Business Forum. The Commissioner attended the Lymington Business Crime Prevention event aimed at local retailers, providing them with crime prevention advice and offering New Forest District Council an opportunity to promote and endorse UK PAC, which I will introduce shortly and which the Commissioner has also mentioned today. Of note, the 2025 British Retail Consortium Crime Survey found that Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary provides the most effective police response to retail crime in the country. So with regards to the pledge of working with partners to identify prolific shoplifters and provide meaningful interventions, in recognition that many businesses are battling to protect their staff and their stock from the rising shoplifting, leaving many feeling helpless and with much carried out by repeat offenders, as referenced today, the Commissioner has funded UK PAC. This is her biggest investment so far to tackle retail crime and to help businesses who wanted a quicker, simpler and easier way to report crimes to the police, whilst providing officers with the evidence they need to catch offenders and put them before the courts. UK PAC is a groundbreaking crime reporting platform which supports local businesses and frees up police and shopkeepers' time. It uses smart technology and artificial intelligence to track patterns of criminal behaviour, helping the police identify repeat offenders, gather evidence and take faster action. The Commissioner has funded UK PAC to support unlimited businesses for 12 months through a one-off grant of £177,548, and those who sign up have the option to stay for a further 2 years at their own cost. And you can see on the slide there that 354 businesses signed up to UK PAC between April and June alone, and 221 evidence packs were created and shared. UK PAC also provides improved communication with the retail community through business crime liaison officers who have engaged with 1,033 businesses in Q1 alone, and that's to help them improve information sharing and evidence gathering. So staying with this pledge in the Police and Crime Plan, efforts to address business crime often focus on CCTV, security and law enforcement, which doesn't address the underlying issues. We know that many perpetrators of retail crime have got complex needs, including carrying trauma and battling with addiction. The Business Crime Navigator intervention is a partnership between the Police and Crime Commissioner, Southern Co-op, Portsmouth City Council and the Society of St James. It seeks to reduce business crime through a holistic, trauma-informed and person-centred approach which addresses the root cause of crime. This short case study brings to life how relationships cause all the damage, but also all of the healing, and why this type of intervention, which places consistent and positive relationships at the heart, is crucial if we want to help people come off drugs and stop committing crime. So Jess describes a childhood that was chaotic, traumatic and unsettled. Both parents were addicts and her dad was very violent. She knew what heroin was at the age of 5 and remembers trying to wake her mum up when she was under the influence. Jess describes her childhood as very lonely and not having many friends. By the age of 12, she met a group of older people and started experimenting in drugs. Her first relationship was extremely violent, and by the time she was 16, her mental health was very poor. Jess used drugs to help cope with her feelings and described herself as wild, although she still managed to function with jobs and keep a home. This changed when she was 29 and used a crack pipe. She instantly knew she was in trouble because her head felt numb for the first time and she needed to feel that every day. She identifies her main issue as violent relationships and PTSD and always felt it was her fault that her relationships were that way. Crack and heroin took away her loneliness, panic attacks and made her feel better, but as with any addiction, it began to destroy her. Jess became homeless and ended up in the most abusive, violent, controlling relationship she'd ever experienced. She mainly made money through shoplifting. Her ex would take her money and force her to shoplift to feed his addiction, and then he'd take the goods from her and she'd do it all over again to support her own addiction. She used to get really nervous, but the fear of withdrawing and violence spurred her on. She describes it as a pure cycle of misery, getting withdrawals every 6 hours. She hated shoplifting and was scared she would get hurt, either by security or a member of the public getting involved, but she would still do it. She was in a constant cycle of shoplifting, selling goods and scoring, knowing that in a few hours she'd need to do it all again. Withdrawals started with flu symptoms, her whole body aching and shaking, and sometimes she wouldn't time it right and would have to go out shoplifting like that. She remembers crying, walking down the road on the way to the shops because she felt so bad, describing it as a horrendous way to live. So the Commissioner has funded a business crime navigator, and that business crime navigator, Liz, came into Jess's life and many others, in this case when Jess was living in a homeless hostel. Liz's constant knocking at her door drove Jess crazy. She didn't trust authority, which is very common, but eventually, because Liz never gave up, those barriers were broken down. Having someone who saw her without her addiction really helped. Liz supported her in attending groups, probation appointments, the job centre and court, and was there when she needed her. Her last relationship ended with Jess being hospitalised due to severe violence, and at that point she had enough and made a statement to the police. He received a 7-year prison sentence. Liz supported her all the way through court, and Jess felt she couldn't have done it without her. Jess spent a lot of time with Liz and describes her as an amazing woman who helped boost her self-esteem and made her feel more worthy because someone as kind as Liz actually took time out to spend with her. So Liz was the start of things which ultimately led to rehab, a long process over about 3 years, which she got through with constant support and kindness, and she is beyond grateful. Through hard work and support, Jess has stopped shoplifting and Jess is off drugs. A number of performance indicators are tracked on an ongoing basis regarding the Business Crime Navigator, and you can see from the slides that it is having a positive outcome, which is observed in a University of Portsmouth evaluation. And the Commissioner is now working with Southampton City Council to explore the potential for a business crime navigator in the city. So still remaining on this same pledge, the Commissioner contributes funding towards drug testing on arrest workers in police custody in Basingstoke, Portsmouth and Southampton. As of 2025, they are jointly funded by the Commissioner and the local authority public health teams. The purpose of drug testing on arrest is to identify those who use cocaine or heroin and commit crime to fund their drug use. It helps steer people out of crime and into treatment pathways at the earliest opportunity. So it applies to people aged 18 and over arrested for a trigger offence, which is basically theft. So that includes burglary, robbery, stealing cars. So business and retail crime is extremely relevant. If an offender refuses to take a drug test, it's an offence. A positive test can't be used as evidence of a previous crime, but it can be used to require an assessment with a drug worker. And if the offender refuses or fails to attend that assessment, it's also an offence. Because the Commissioner funds the drug workers to be based in the police station, it reduces the number of those who fail to attend their assessment because the offer is instantaneous. So that's really helpful because we know that this vulnerable cohort often have multiple needs and they might be at a greater risk of failing to attend a future appointment due to their more chaotic lifestyles. And the idea is that once they've seen the drug worker, they're encouraged to voluntarily engage with community-based services. Of those that tested positive for cocaine or heroin, on an ongoing tracking has showed a reduction of 44% in rearrest rates after 1 year, and that shows a positive link from being drug tested to engagement to rehabilitation. Between April 2024 and March 2025, shoplifting increased by almost 12% compared to the same time the previous year. Increased reports of shoplifting are reflective of the national picture and indicative of improved trust and confidence in reporting by retailers. The Commissioner pledged to increase charge and summons rates for business and retail crimes, and you can see from the slide that 1,639 more people were charged or summoned for shoplifting this year compared to the same time the previous year, which is an increase of almost 52%. The overall charge summons rate has also risen. The Commissioner has praised Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary for its significant improvements in the latest appeal inspection by HMIC FRS. Amongst other areas, the inspection highlighted a tough approach on tackling retail crime and effective partnerships and innovation in local crime prevention and victim services. These final 4 slides relate to the Commissioner holding the Chief Constable to account for supporting the National Police Chiefs Council Retail Crime Action Plan. This is a strategy developed by policing in partnership with the government to tackle shoplifting and retail crime. And much of what I've already presented is evidence of these 10 areas. So the force places the victim at the heart of retail crime, and an example of that is the investment in UK PAC. Repeat hotspots are shared with the Strategic Area Policing Hub and Central Team for Antisocial Behaviour and Retail Crime, and that's to explore tactical advice in problem solving. Some retailers provide safe space for victims of domestic abuse, and the neighbourhood policing teams work with those retailers and ensure that those responsible for investigating domestic abuse are made aware. The Commissioner funds the Victim Care Hub, and their support for local businesses has been promoted. Local policing teams and local bobbies take primacy in understanding repeat offenders, ensuring they are flagged on the police system and included in local briefings. In September 24, in partnership with the Welsh Police Force, Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary piloted live facial recognition technology in Portsmouth, Southampton, Basingstoke and Winchester to target outstanding suspects for high risk and priority offences, those wanted on warrant and those who have evaded court proceedings. And work is ongoing to tackle localised organised crime group activity with independent retailers handling stolen property and property stolen to order. There remains a focus on engagement with good communication strategies to reach the retail community. Drug testing on arrest is an example of crime prevention through addressing drug addiction and the root cause of crime, as is the Commissioner funding website security assessments for businesses and charities who are victims of cybercrime. And finally, of course, as is UK PAC, which helps build stronger cases, resulting in fewer court hearings, and that's because more offenders plead guilty due to the weight of the evidence provided. And that concludes my presentation on business and retail crime. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. Members, we're now going to go to questions. I saw Christine first and then Luigi. Christine?
Thank you. Thank you for that. I still have issues though. I mean, we're currently on disc and transferring over to UK PAC, but my residents, my shopkeepers, we have members in Aldershot that are wanted and have ASBOs and all the rest of it, but they're released and they're hitting our shops every day. Every day, the shopkeepers are reporting it on this, saying that they've just been into bargain buys, they've just done Greggs, they've just done, and actually, every day it can be the same person's name coming up and being reported. We keep going on there and going, report it. Yeah, but it's weeks before they're picked up again. And it's the system's just taking too long. When you've got the same person that's hitting the shop day after day 15 times, and it's still they're picked up again. It's just not working. Either there's not enough police or it's not working.
You, Christine, and yes, you're absolutely right that it is a perpetual cycle, and this is why when I spoke earlier about the prison service and the crippling criminal justice system and my pushback to David Gauke into the Ministry of Justice around what needs to happen, because you're absolutely right, a lot of these people will already be convicted, they will already be deemed to be prolific offenders for shoplifting, let's say, they will be on orders, which 10 years ago, even perhaps 5 or 6 years ago, if they offended while subject to a community order, that would almost certainly mean a revoke of the community order, a resentence. And in a lot of cases, prison. That is almost impossible now. And what you've just said, the frustration you've voiced on behalf of your retailers, I could have literally copy and paste what you've just said as a frustration for your older shop policing team, because they are going around arresting these people, taking them into police custody, booking them in, interviewing them, doing the statements, back to court, and it is now impossible now for for shoplifters to go to prison, because there is a move away from sending people to prison for under 12 months, and to go to prison for more than 12 months as a shoplifter it would have to be a real form of organised crime across counties, across with a particular industry that you're feeding into, etc. So if you are an individual drug addict or alcoholic, for example, who's shoplifting to fund your addiction, as we've just heard from someone else, that is a sort of offence where you might get 3, 4, 5, 6 months. I was a magistrate for 16 years. I've sent hundreds of people to prison for these kind of offences, and now it's really difficult to do that. This is creating a lot more work for the police. There are more community orders, as you've talked about, like public space protection orders, things they can use. The probation service, as a consequence, are a lot busier than they otherwise would be, with less tools in the box that they can now use. And that's why, if we're not going to send people to prison for these sorts of offences, it's like I said at the very beginning, meaningful, funded rehabilitation is key. Otherwise, you're just going to make the front part of the system, police, shopkeepers, detriment to the shopkeepers from their goods, the probation officers, you're just making a whole load of people even busier with it not having the right output at the end of it. It is very frustrating. This part of the system, you're absolutely right, it's not working, it's broken, which is why there has been a commitment made by the government to fund 2,000 more probation officers, and I think £70 million more going into the probation service to fund more meaningful rehabilitation programmes. And I've been involved in some of the national look across the piece of what that could be, but they're not in place yet, so the problem still exists. In terms of the timeliness of the police doing their investigation and getting them then before the courts again and arresting them and charging them, etc., well, you can see on that page that we have had I think it's a 45% increase in people who are, or 45% increase in formal actions being taken. That could be a community resolution. It could be you need to engage with the drug testing on arrest, the key workers, which we fund with the Integrated Care Board. It could be with the upper tier authorities, or it could be no, we're actually taking you through the criminal justice system. So we have seen a spike in shoplifting being reported, and a spike in formal actions being taken, and a spike in the charge and summons rates as well. And that's not that there is a whole load more shoplifting going on this year than there was last year. It's just the fact that because of the push that I made from March last year to the Chief Constable, I want you to really prioritise this area now. A lot more shopkeepers are now bothering to report, whereas previously they didn't, because nothing used to happen before, which is, you can understand why they didn't bother to report. So I'm encouraged actually by the increase in the numbers we're seeing, because it means that people are now reporting, shopkeepers are now bothering to report again. And the more people we get through the criminal justice system and on some of these drug treatment programmes, the better. There's just not enough of them available, and there's not enough of them out there. So I'm with you on the issue. I think I would urge you all to raise it with your MPs, get them to keep pushing. There is a piece of legislation going through Parliament at the moment called the Crime and Justice Bill. They can talk about this and push for amendments to that for this exact purpose.
Thank you very much, John. I'll go to Luigi.
Thank you for that. For following on from the very valid points that Christine raised, I'm glad to see that drug users are being treated as a public health issue, which is, I'm glad you're embracing that. 70 million is just not going to cut it, nationally. That's just a joke. Drug testing in Southampton, I presume that refers to the custody suite that you're talking about. What about the other areas? Because in Andover, you've got, potentially you could go to Basingstoke, and that drug testing, I think, is quite important because it does give you an indication of why people are stealing things.
Yeah, the pilot was there, but it's now rolled out and it has been for the last over a year now, 18 months. So drug testing is in all custody suites, including the Isle of Wight, and the specialist key workers, the public health workers, are working across all custody suites, including Basingstoke.
Brilliant, thank you, Donna. Alan.
Thank you, Chair. As a working magistrate now, I can just reinforce what Donna says. The system is broken. And in terms of drug rehabilitation, there is less facilities available now than there were a decade ago. And when you have individuals that have a charge sheet of 200 current shoplifting offences and you just send them back on the street, it's very difficult to see that you've got any impact. But coming back to your business and retail presentation, you were talking about the PCC's business unit engaging with bids. Is that done in a proactive way, or are you waiting for a request from bids to come in and help with their retail community?
No, it's proactive. So what you've got through UK PAC is people who work for them who are going out to bids, going out to national chains, independents, walking up the high street, and also through Chief Inspector Marcus Cater, who I said is the business crime reduction lead for the constabulary. He is also tasking the local district policing team, so neighbourhood officers, PCSOs, PCs, local bobbies, to go out and help recruit people up to UK PAC, because tackling shoplifting is a priority for every district across the police force area. So it's a two-pronged approach. You've got UK PAC going out and you've got the police going out. They're holding presentations, they're going to parish council meetings, they're going to other public meetings, they're speaking to Neighbourhood Watch. So we are engaged with the bids as well. So, and then of course, if you do have a business who happens to see it online, and will see it on Meridian or whatever and says, oh yeah, I want to join that, they can come in proactively, but there is a lot of proactive work being done our side of the fence too.
Is it possible to know if a certain bid's been contacted already?
If you wouldn't mind dropping me an email with those details, I will connect you to Marcus and he'll be able to come back to you and give you the readout on that.
Thank you.
And Don, just to pick up on bids, I'm conscious that bids are mentioned a lot in the presentation, and we know they're really valuable for the areas that have them, but there are some significant areas that don't. Basingstoke, for example, doesn't have a bid anymore. So areas without a bid, are they missing out? Or if there is somebody that sponsors, because for Festival Place, I would call them a sponsor of our disc system, and they sort of fulfill some of those functions, is there another way?
That's a good point. I mean, if there is a bid, obviously it's easier, isn't it? 'Cause it's easier to coordinate. But having said that, there is no reason why in any independent trader on any high street, we have got jewellers that are already signed up. We've got people like that. I know in Basingstoke you've got a couple of those who probably would be very interested in this. They're very welcome to join it. I'd encourage that for them. So if there isn't a bid, then it will be down to the local policing teams to know those shops that are the most prolifically hit, go and speak to them. But it is open to everybody, every retail outlet in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, and as I say, I'm paying for it. Where you have got a bid that's using a different system, UK PAC will try and interface with them as best as they can, and DISC is an interface to UK PAC. And also, as part of what I'm paying them, they have analysts who are sitting behind the scenes who are then correlating the information. So if you've got Bob Smith, who's shoplifting in Romsey this morning and over this afternoon, then he's off to Basingstoke tonight, for example, to some of your local supermarkets. What UK PAC will do is, from the AI technology they've got and from the images that the shop, still images, CCTV, they are able to track that. Or if very often the shop retail staff know it's Bob Smith because he's in all the time and they've written multiple statements about him in the past. So where the names are coming in, they're collating all of that. So where people are going across the county on a regular basis, they are sharing that. So they're saying to Romsey Police, Andover Police, Basingstoke Police, you might be looking at that one individual report from there, but actually this person has done all of this in the last 24 hours, and it needs to be linked up as a package of probably much more organised crime if they're travelling around the county, which is what happens. So there's a load of work going on. And also when retailers are filling in the app and they're writing their own, witness statement, I was on duty today in the co-op and this is what happened. If it's not written in a way that the Crown Prosecution Service would like, what I'm also paying them to do is to tidy that up and get it into a state that it's fit back to you for you to say, yeah, I'm happy with that electronic signature, back then into the police force inbox. So there is a checking and scanning process before it gets to the police to make sure the quality is good enough. And what this means is the police literally, rather than having to build the whole evidence and do the investigation, they've got the CCTV, they've got the still images, they've got the name, they can cross-reference it, they can check the PNC for who this person is. Yep, that looks like it's him. The statement is grammatically good enough. It goes off, so it should be a really quick checkbox for a police officer to then get it to the CPS for a charging decision, then back, and off you go and pick them up on the warrant. So we have seen a massive uptake in productivity for the police because a lot of the work is effectively being done before it even gets to them, which is really good.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Leslie.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the 150k funding in Gosport to, as we know, 20% of criminals commit 80% of the crime, and very often, like you say, substance misuse or as a result of trauma from ACE in childhood. And then switching over to the shops that very often suffer from harassment, alarm and distress from these prolific offenders. I noticed that Telford have done a 5-year criminal behaviour order on a man who was a prolific shoplifter. Now, I understand that potentially, so he's banned from certain shops, and I understand there is a potential to displace that criminal activity, but for those communities that have suffered years of this, is this something that Hampshire Constabulary review when they're looking at our prolific offenders, and do we have any examples to make people perhaps think? Thank you.
Yeah, the CBOs, the criminal behaviour orders, Leslie, as you'll know as a former police officer, are brilliant. We weren't using those civil orders in Hampshire Constabulary as much as some other police forces were over the previous sort of 4 or 5 years. They've been around for a while, as you'll know. We have stepped that up over the last 12, 18 months. There are a lot more now. I think we've had over 100% increase in the number of CBOs we're using. And the same with the stalking prevention order and the domestic violence prevention orders. There's a whole load of orders like this that are really, really effective. And as you said, Leslie, sometimes communities, high streets, just need a break, particularly when you've got one prolific offender, and we have used them, and they're not dissimilar, some of them in length of time to that you've said. I mean, that is right on the top end, clearly. Normally they'll be going for sort of 6 to 12 months, see how that goes. If the behaviour starts again, you go back for 2 years, 3 years, and you step it up as you go through. But we have got we've got some offenders who are not allowed to go to a certain area, particularly, for example, I know of, because I've walked the high street with the police, and I know it in Portsmouth, Commercial Road, where there's been quite a lot of drug-related and knife-related robberies, and also shoplifting, but in fact even more serious offences. And there are a number of CBOs now that cover Commercial Road in Portsmouth because of the level of violence that was happening there.
Thank you, Jackie.
Just building on what you said earlier, and obviously my question was in your statement, it would have been better here. But what about if the offenders are juveniles? Because the group that are doing everything in Southampton are all school age. They're not even, university, college age. They are all, and there is again, optics perception that that's why they're allowed to get away with it, because they're juveniles.
Well, that is the question of the day for me, because I could not agree more. Some of the most criminalised people we have in our communities now are actually under the age of 18. And these are people who are committing murder, attempt murder, burglaries, stealing cars, running sophisticated drugs businesses, stabbings outside schools, you'll be aware of in the attempt murders. They are really, really serious offences being committed by 16, 17, sometimes 18-year-olds, and sometimes even younger. And And I think the criminal justice system has not caught up with the level of harm coming out of people under the age of 18 as quickly as it should have done. They're getting there now. There's been a lot of lobbying by people like me again around this issue. And one of the things as Police and Crime Commissioner that I do is fund the Youth Justice Services in the four, obviously we've got 4 YJSs across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. And when I became Police Commissioner, it was an amount of money, 235,000 a piece, I think, that I pay, and it was just the money that was always going. And we've had a chance to review this, and I put some caveats on it now around things that I want done, linked to my violent reduction unit, which is headed up by a retired superintendent called Jim Pegler, who works for me, who you'll know, Jim, and yeah, so I'm now being a bit more asky of that money. So we're not very good grammar, was it? But I'm demanding a bit more because it's not that I'm trying to ask the youth justice teams to do more. It's more about being able to assure me that they are being as robust as they can with the options that they've got. If you think of, for those that aren't aware, the Youth Justice Service is probation for under 18s, basically. And also you have the Director of Children's Services and the head social worker will sit on those boards. And we really do need to grip this a lot more in the under 18s because the harm that we're seeing coming out of that cohort is extraordinary at the moment, and particularly in your city, as you know. And actually I feel like if we don't grip it when they're children, well then we're setting them up to fail in adult life, aren't we? So we've got to do more now. But there is some extraordinary work going on through your council as well. They're doing some really, really good things.
Thank you, Donna. And finally, Gwen.
Thank you, Chair. I actually wanted to be final, actually, for the point that I'd like to make. So, brilliant as usual, Donna. One of the things that I would like to say, right, so I know that our role is to scrutinise you, hold you to account and everything else. But however, maybe because I've got family that are in the police force as well, and I know how hard they work under, you or other police and crime commissioners. They are working hard to keep us safe and to tackle crime. And it's this ongoing, they're a bit like hamsters, aren't they? They keep going and going and going. And I actually feel uncomfortable if it was felt, by them, that us as a panel, that we only criticise. And I'd really like to acknowledge the daily fight, that those officers and the risk that they're under on a daily basis, whether it is a shoplifter or it could be somebody brandishing a knife. These officers, they go there to work on their shift, whatever it might be, and they deal with this. We ask them to deal with it and they deal with it. And they are dealing with people who have got mental health issues, drug addiction, so their behaviours will be very different from the rest of us. So I would actually like just to pass on. Now, I can't speak for the rest of the panel. I'm only going to speak for myself. But I would like to pass on my thanks to your officers and everybody in your team for the battle. And it is a battle. And I hope that it's one that you win. And offer my thanks.
Well, thank you, Gwen. And it is welcome. It is a tough job. And, my inbox falls into 2 distinct categories. It's the volume of what I get through is people saying, well, actually, the example Tonya gave, which is a really valid one, which is that this happened. Actually, it wasn't effectively what's happened with the scenario that Tonya gave in Hedge End was it just wasn't prioritised properly and it wasn't handled properly. It's those volume crimes where they are battling against the demand, not having enough officers still, 10 years on still, we don't have enough police officers. And it's that volume stuff where they're just on that constant treadmill, like you say. When something really big happens and someone's child's gone missing or there's been, a serious sexual assault or a really serious violent offence, the feedback I get, and thankfully those victims or people involved in that are few and far between, much fewer than the volume crimes, but the feedback I get that this police officer saved my life or this police officer has saved my child's life by intervening, finding them, bringing them home, whatever it might be. I do think the public are honestly really grateful as well, because they do know that when the chips are down and something really bad happens, the police are there, and they can be relied upon, and they do extraordinary work, and they are literally safeguarding hundreds of people every day across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. We're a big area, 2.2 million people, and I'll just finish, if it's okay, Chair, if I may, and I just want to come back on a point that Leslie made, and I think I was going to go into a bit more detail on this at the next meeting, but it would be remiss of me not to mention it now as well. To follow on from the point you've made about the good work, is that our HMIC inspection report, our PL inspection 2-year review, was published on Thursday last week. And, you know, I'm not going to say everything's perfect. It's not. You don't need me to tell you that. You know that. You know there's still a long way to go. We still are massively behind on the number of police officers that we should have. We're still not funded in the way that we should be. I'm still battling against these things. However, when we had our PL inspection that was carried out in 22, all the field work, and the report was published in March of 2000 or February of 2023, we had 1 inadequate, 2 requires improvements, a whole load of adequates, and I think we might have 1 good or no goods. We've now got 2 goods, 6 adequates, no requires improvements, and no inadequates. The shift that we have made has been extraordinary. And in our hot debrief meeting, the Chief Constable and I, back 2 months ago with HMIC before the report was published, they said to us that you are on course to be the very best police force in the country if you carry on with this work. And we are now one of only 5 police forces in the country that has no requires improvements at all. And they brought in a whole new inspection regime for investigating crime. And when it started about 9-10 months ago, all the chief constables, all the PCCs were like, oh God, this is going to be so difficult to get a decent grade in this area because it's new. But actually, for us to come out as adequate in that area, in view of all of that, when many of the forces around us that have just had their reports published requires improvement, I have to say I am so proud of the police force and where we've come from, and it has been a real journey. It's been more than a gallop for the last couple of years. It's been really, really full on, but I do think their hard work is paying off, but there is still a lot more to do. And I think fast forward another 2 years and I really want to be able to sit here, well, it won't be me because I won't be the Police and Crime Commissioner regardless because my role's going. I hope whoever is legitimately in this role is able to sit here in front of you and say that we are now the best police force in the country, because I think we've got all the foundations of that.
Thank you, Donna. I saw lots of people nodding and being very supportive of the constabulary, which is great. Shirley, I think you just wanted one final comment.
And it is a quick one. But I think the elephant in the room here is looking forward next year when we have an elected mayor. I think everyone in here appreciates the closeness we have to you and the way we can scrutinise you, we can work with you, we can take it back. It's unbelievably superb. My concern is that with the elected mayor, what will be happening in the future? Will this be diluted? Would that thrust still be there? And I think that's my concern. I'd just be interested in your observations about that.
Yeah, thank you. Well, as you know, the English Devolution Bill was laid down for Parliament 2 weeks ago, and then last week, or it might have been 3 weeks ago, and then 2 weeks ago, the legal order for the creation of this morality was laid down for Hampshire and the Solent, along with the other 4 areas. And yeah, so I mean, obviously the role of the Police and Crime Commissioner will be formally subsumed from the 1st of April 2027, we've just heard. So you've probably got me for another year in this legal role. And then after that, I think, yeah, you know, the panel will obviously be working with the Deputy Mayor, Police, Crime and Fire, won't they, as opposed to the Mayor themselves. But I do envisage that the Mayor will be meeting with you at least once a year, and the Mayor will have other meetings not dissimilar to this with the councillors, but obviously the focus and that you have with the level of detail that you have with me on the policing and crime element would continue, but just with the Deputy Mayor. And at the moment, out of the 43 police forces across England and Wales, so whilst I'm a directly elected Police and Crime Commissioner, my equivalents in 7 other areas are Deputy Mayors, Police, Crime and Fire. Like in Manchester, for example, so Andy Burnham's Deputy Kate Green is basically me in Manchester. And I don't ever think of her any differently when I'm like I was on a call with her at 10 o'clock this morning. I don't think of her any differently because she's appointed by him. She is doing that job for him, for the people of Manchester. So when we're on calls together, her powers, the only thing that she can't do that I can do is set the precept, sack a chief constable and appoint a chief constable. Beyond that, everything else she can do. But, you know, and write the annual report, but in reality, she's going to do all the prep work on the annual report, or the Mayor's Office Police and Crime will, and then Andy Burnham will look at it, go through it, and I'm sure he'll add some bits if he wants to, but ultimately the work still gets done in the way it does at the moment. So I hope that, whatever happens in the future, whoever ends up being your point of contact, I hope that you will continue to have the close relationship with that person that you do with me, because that's the way it should continue. And the staff, the people that are doing the doing behind the scenes, such as Karen and Wayne and Marisa and the other guys that are here, they will carry on doing their jobs. The name of the office won't be the OPCC, it will be MOPAC. But other than that, it really shouldn't change that much for them at all, I hope.
So very final to Jackie.
It's not a question, it's a comment, and something that Donna and I will no doubt share as time approaches. So I was the last ever chair of the Hampshire Police Authority, and it felt like it was being taken away from me kicking and screaming, but legislation changed, things changed, and I handed the baton over at that point in time. Whilst I'm not a great fan of devolution and how it's all playing out, I think change happens and we have to embrace that change. And the point I was going to make, the individual may or may not change, but actually the role will still be there, and it's up to those individuals on whatever the panel is then called to make sure that they have got a good working relationship with whoever heads up that part of how devolution sees the policing side to be governed. So whilst I think there's a lot of nervousness amongst councillors and people who haven't been through it, as someone that had that role for 15 years and it wrenched away from them, it felt like, and was very against it, actually things improve as things move forward and change.
Thank you very much, Jackie. And just before we close, because that was our final item, I think I would just put on that as well that says, it's interesting, isn't it? Some members will know I do quite a lot of work for the Local Government Association up and down the country, and I don't hear many councillors who are on similar panels scrutinising across boundary, having the same sort of relationship with the individuals that they are scrutinising. So personally, thank you very much, Donna. It means a lot, I think, to everybody on the panel. So members, we've got the presentation to note. I'm hopeful everybody's happy to note it. Noted, brilliant, thank you very much. That is our final agenda item. I'm just going to check with Katie that I'm not perfect. So just to say thank you very much, Commissioner. Thank you to all of the people from the office, and thank you, members.